Hamatak Yapi, this is Nick Estes, co-host of the Red Nation podcast. This is the start of Native American Heritage Month. We are also kicking off a GoFundMe campaign for Red Media. You may have heard all of the hoopla around the presidential elections that are happening this month, but I just want to make a pitch for Red Media and talk a little bit about our funding platform and our media ethics and values. This isn't just an advertisement for you to listen. This is actually some background information about Red Media, so it might be a little bit interesting for folks who are interested in the origin stories of the Red Nation podcast, as well as what we do at Red Media and who we are and the sort of values that we try to promote. So every 4 years, presidential elections suck the air out of the room, and there's no other conversation that can be had. It's as if the election of a U.S. president determines the fate of the world. We do not believe that. We believe in people power. We believe that stories shouldn't just be aligned and drowned out by the noisy chatter of corporate media or the ruling class parties that promote and, facilitate genocide against Palestinians. We try to provide an alternative platform for Native voices. And with that, we don't have advertisements on our shows, and we will never have advertisements on our shows because that's not what we do. We are not corporate funded. We are not beholden to major donors. We are not beholden to major advertisers. We don't have, somebody who's sitting from the State Department or ABC News or whoever reviewing our scripts and reviewing our, guests that we have and the topics that we discuss. We align ourselves specifically, with Indigenous communities, but also an anti-imperialist tradition that's trying to build a better world. And out of that, we've created a media philosophy that is member funded. You as members who, even if you pay for the podcast or not, or just listen to it for free on YouTube or whatever podcast app that you have on your phone, it supports us. It gets our messages across. It gets, that's our biggest advertising, is you, the listener, because we just know that everything is captured. All the social media apps are captured. Facebook, Meta, Twitter or X or whatever, they're all controlled by billionaires who don't have our interests in mind. And in fact, we've found that most of our Patreon subscriptions happen just by word of mouth. The funding happens by word of mouth. So if you're listening to this podcast, it means that we've reached you in a way that, we just couldn't on other platforms. And as we see the repression against, anyone has an inkling of, support or sympathy for Palestinian humanity, this is going to clamp down in the next 4 years, no matter who's president. We already see it under the Biden administration. And if there's a Trump administration, we're going to see it even more. And if there's a Harris administration, we're going to see the continuation of the Biden era policies. But our coverage and our positions will not change. We will be here reporting and providing the viewpoints that are necessary for our people and for the future of this planet. So that's kind of the gist of the moment that we're in right now. I think it's incredibly important that we support alternative media. Me personally, I don't even read corporate media anymore. I've really pared back my media consumption just because most of what we get is completely manufactured and controlled by a few, billionaires in the United States. And we can see that more and more, especially with this media environment around the genocide in Palestine. Frankly, I only really listen to the Electronic Intifada and the Istiza podcasts, Macdizi Street, some others out there that like Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, Delete Your Account. But those are also membership funded podcasts and media outlets that are also bucking sort of this trend and are also under attack. So it's not to also say that we're, the victims of this kind of grand conspiracy. It's to say that what we're doing is actually striking a nerve because people just don't believe, the BS that's being spewed in this particular moment. So with that, I just want to turn a little bit to our sort of media philosophy and what we try to do at Red Media. So back in, I think, 2019 or something, we kind of had this moment of reckoning with our podcasts and everything, and we were kind of becoming big, and we professionalized. We got a format. We got like listeners. We used to just have like a random SoundCloud account, and so with this kind of more professionalization and organization that we had around our podcast, we kind of developed this media vision. This is something that we've done presentations for internally in political education for our members of the Red Nation, but also Red Media. But we've also done like community-based workshops on media literacy and how to write and become a writer and a media producer. And I'll just go over the 4 principles of Red Media. This is based off of our podcast work, and the first one is Indigenous is a way of relating. Oftentimes, indigeneity is kind of defined as this kind of parochial, narrow vision, identity, what have you. But that's not the tradition that we're drawing from. If indigeneity is fundamentally about relationality, then that is a kind of internationalism, because we have to make relations beyond just our colonizers, right? Which is the kind of overarching framework for the U.S. Federal Indian, policy and treaty making. It's just the U.S. indigenous kind of relationship. But that's not the tradition we're drawing on. And that's very evident in our recent episode on Indigenous Peoples Day and the history behind that. That's an international holiday. That's an international day of celebration of Indigenous resistance and resilience. The second one is by any media necessary. And we're not the kinds of people who kind of shirk away from this platform or that platform. We believe we don't want to, just be a novel sort of outlet that's kind of, they just do the indigenous stuff. It's like we believe that our politics are universal. They're accessible to anybody. Therefore, we use different platforms, and different people have different ways of communicating. Some people are readers, some people are listeners, some people are watchers, right? So that's just, we try to hit all of those platforms. That's why we're on YouTube. That's why we're on podcasts. That's why we're working on books. We're restarting our newsletter, the Red Nation newsletter. And that assertion by any media necessary comes from the 1998 Zapatista Encuentro, where the Caracoles issued an international call to left and progressive media outlets to amplify the messages of movements from the left. The third philosophy we have is we're not a minority. This kind of builds on the second philosophy. Typically, Native people are just seen as like we're just one flavor in the multicultural milieu of the United States, right? We're minoritized. Like, why should we care about indigenous issues? Because they're just such a small part of the population. They're like 1.5% of the population. What does it matter? That's actually a genocidal logic that we just flatly reject, because we understand this minoritized position actually puts us at a disadvantage, and that's not how our ancestors or our nations operate. So we reject the margins, and we believe that our struggles and our aspirations are universal. Like, there's nothing, look at the movement to protect water, the water protectors movement. It was something that was definitely grounded in indigenous values, but anybody was allowed to participate. And it became a universal identity that even non-indigenous people had taken up. The fourth one is kill the capitalist in your head. And this kind of gets back to our membership-driven funding model, because but also how we produce content, right? I think typically people try to produce content as a commodity to be bought and sold. We definitely make all of our material accessible and free to the public. If it's not, on our podcast feed, then it's on our YouTube feed, and vice versa. If it's not on our YouTube feed, then it's on our podcast feed. We do have a Patreon account, which you'll get access to all sorts of things, but we also reject this idea that we should just be producing content to make money, because we simply don't. We don't make money off of every single podcast episode that we produce. We actually get our funding directly from small dollar donations of like $2 a month, and that's why we're doing this GoFundMe campaign, because we are trying to expand. We're actually trying to build out our publishing platform and our relationship right now with Common Notions. We still have books that are in the works, but fundamentally we're just kind of at a standstill in terms of our growth. And so this is just a pitch, for people to like maybe check out a little bit from the very kind of toxic and I don't know how to else to describe it, the toxic media atmosphere that's going on right now in this country, especially around the U.S. elections, when people just simply can't focus on anything else, as if our alternatives lie in just two individuals. And we flatly reject that, and we hope you do too. But we also want to just encourage you to make a $5 donation, $10 donation, $100 donation. It goes a long way. And we just really appreciate everyone who's done donations and support for us in the past. The best way to actually support our podcast and this GoFundMe is to share it with other people and to let them know. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, have a discussion, have a reading group about it. If you're an academic and you've used our podcasts in your classrooms, if you're a teacher and you've used our podcast or material in your classrooms, think of how many times you assign a book and students have to buy that book, or the school purchases a material, right? That money is going into that publisher's hands, right? It's funding their project. But every time you listen to a podcast or you share it with students or in a classroom, you're doing it for free. And we believe education should be for free and accessible. But we also recognize that there's a value placed on something that you're paying for that goes into a large corporation, and then there's a value placed on something that you're not paying for that goes to a community-run mostly volunteer-run podcast that's not that's run by Indigenous people. So it is important to where your dollars go in that sense. And we will never accept corporate money. We'll never do advertisements on our show. We will always make our material accessible. But this just helps us sort of secure funding for the next year and into the future, so that we can continue to grow and to expand and to provide really, hard-hitting commentary and analysis that you all deserve and that we would love to keep producing. We just need somebody to help pay the lights and help keep to keep the lights on, I should say, our light bills, our electricity bills, etc. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add?
Thank you, Nick. What comes to mind when you're talking is this is media by and for Indigenous people. Like, we go out onto the reservations, we do reporting. Just this week and last night, I was a part of reporting on the Waltz campaign stop that happened in Window Rock, Arizona, and the amplification of what happened on the ground at the grassroots level was being reported only by us, the Red Nation podcast. When Diné citizens were being escorted and brutalized out of that event, I was the only media person there actually recording and reporting on this. And this goes back into what media and media reporting has become in the last year. Just as a member of Red Nation, staff of Red Media, the media work has completely changed for me in this last year, and what it even means to utilize our platform for reporting and also just adding analysis to what's happening in the world and getting it out to the people. It's very important work. Part of what's going on with the genocide that's happening in Palestine is that this is also a media war where we are having to create, or not create, but report the counter narratives that are actually happening against this imperialist media going on in the world. And so I find that this work is so extremely important. And just as a personal fan of the Red Nation podcast, like, I'll do anything to keep this show going, just because on a personal level, like, I listen to this show and it gives me not only the analysis that I need to I guess move forward in the world, it also just fills me with hope to keep going on a weekly basis. And I know plenty of comrades who feel the same about our show. So if you have listened to an episode and enjoyed it, please consider donating to our GoFundMe. If you are a weekly listener, please consider donating to our GoFundMe. Um, Indigenous media is and coming from us, it's I don't know, it's just so important. So thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I will just say like we're kind of like a diamond in the rough, not just in the media sphere, but also when it comes to Indigenous media, because we do have explicit politics and perspectives around our orientation and what we choose to report on and what we choose to focus on and where we are, in terms of like the events that we attend, when when the media had abandoned Leonard Peltier, we were there. When the media doesn't focus on the grassroots organizing in the Navajo Nation against this kind of two-party duopoly and corporate, party system, we were there as well. And we've been doing this work on the ground. We were there with the East Phillips demolition of the roof depot here in Minneapolis. We've been reporting on the ground as much as we can and as humanly possible, but also providing, critical analysis and timely analysis. So the link is in the description for the GoFundMe. If you can, please make a donation. Every dollar helps.